problems when it comes to heavy trucking and logging devices, and what the implications of such things are. So basically what we're going to be talking about today, forgive the poor PDF presentation on Edge. Is anybody an Edge nerd? Do you know how to make a PDF full screen? I didn't think so. I've never met an Edge nerd.
Function 11.
Yeah, I tried that.
No?
Function F11.
Alt-Enter.
Alt-Enter. No.
I tried both
So
those.
you guys are striking out. All right, anyway, so what we're going to talk about is we're going to do a quick can primer because there may be people in the audience who don't know anything about that, heavy trucking. Then we're going to talk about the ELDs themselves, talking about a really cool event called the Cybertruck Challenge and why that's interesting, and then go through a summary. And I guess to preface the talk, this work was a breadth-first search across electronic logging devices, which we'll get to in a little bit. So if you're unfamiliar with CAN, CAN bus is the primary network within a vehicle, and it's also used in heavy trucking. But with heavy trucking, they throw another standard on top of it called J1939. All that really does is specify some specific IDs and payloads. But if you've never messed with CAN before, CAN is an arbitration ID and an 8-byte maximum per payload. And that's it. That's CAN bus. So now you know everything you need to know to hack cars, because that's pretty much it. So something like the throttle position will have an ID, and then it'll be an offset within the byte stream. And that's it. Now you're experts, so let's talk about heavy trucking, which is the focus of the talk today. So the United States heavily depends on the trucking industry. The idiom that is used is if you bought it, a truck brought it. So basically anything you pick up in stores has hit a truck at some point or another. And the trucking industry is important because it is critical infrastructure for the United States. And if there's like a weather event in Denver, that slowdown can be felt all the way to the East Coast. That'll affect shipments across the country. So when you're talking about trucks and security and whether you've got an attack that can be widespread, there's significant impact there. The other thing about the trucking industry is there's a fair amount of regulations that prevent drivers from driving too long. We're caring about safety of our drivers, we're caring about safety of the payload, safety of other passengers on the roads. There's some regulations that are in place. And part of that is checking logbooks for when the driver was driving, how long they drove for, and then the enforcement takes that logbook and checks it, make sure that they're not violating that principle. Oh no, I can't get all of success kid in there, that's terrible. So the government said, well, there's people going around our logbooks, so they're not always filling it in right, and they're lying, and that's bad. People are bad. I know. Let's add more regulation, and that's going to fix our regulation problem. So that's what they did. So they require that we use electronic logging devices now. Effective December 2017, you must have an electronic logging device within your vehicle. And this document is 444 pages. It is awesome. And we're going to look at 2 pages to give you a high-level overview of what's going on. So on this particular page of the document, testing procedures 1.11, quality assurance. It says insert quality assurance requirements here. This is the finalized published document. So when you're making one of these things and you're like, okay, you know, I'm going to make one, I'm going to make some money, this seems like a pretty good market opportunity, what am I going to do here? How do I make sure that it does what it's supposed to do? I don't know. I guess an exercise left up to the reader. But within the 444 pages, there actually is some good. So this section here specifies that when transmitting data wirelessly, you must use TLS. And so somebody knew what that was and put it in the document. So that's a good idea. If we're going to transmit our communications, they should be secure. That seems pretty good. So you might say, wow, 444 pages of requirements, that must be really difficult to get qualified. How do I do it? And the answer is self-certification. The only requirement to make yourself a manufacturer of these dongles, to put yourself on the list of all of them, is that you self-certify that you have created something that meets those 444 pages of requirements. So naturally, I self-certify a lot of things about myself, which we can talk about at length later. And the FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier and Safety Administration, that's what it is the one who publishes the list of all the registered ELDs. At the time of this capture, there were over 70. I'm sure that number is increasing. But that's the list. So when if you're a driver or you operate a carrier or where you're at in the chain, if you say, I need ELD, you can either go to this list or they're so commoditized that you can buy them at Walmart. And that's what we did. So that's what these are. These ones, this is an ELD that you can get at Walmart. They also have them off the shelf in truck stops, that kind of thing. So we're talking like around $100 probably average. Some of them get up to $500 or $600 depending on what they do. But most of them look something like this. You plug it in. This is the data port for the vehicle. Plug it in, and it does this thing. Almost all of them have companion apps that work on your phone, that talk Bluetooth to the device or back to the servers, that kind of thing. So the idea is this thing watches the truck, watches how long you're driving, checks the engine time, and that kind of thing, and then you can combine that with the app for drivers to check in. And then everybody can be happy because then we can regulate all these people who are lying about their logbooks because they're not even. But I will say that there was a new bill introduced to the House recently trying to extend that deadline from December of this year to add 2 years onto it because in 2 years they're totally going to go back and secure all these that are already on the shelf. So trust them on that one. I'm not sure that the regulations that this bill is going to make too much of a difference, but like any bill, there's probably some economical and political reasons why somebody would introduce such a thing. But let's go shopping. Let's take a look and see how many of these we can get and do a breadth first search was the attempt. So we didn't buy one of these things with the sole intent of finding a vulnerability, exploiting it, getting proof of concept. So if you're one of those POC or GTFO guys, you can GTFO because that wasn't the point of the research. Because there's 70 of these things, and if you have 70 of something, you're going to find a bad apple in there anyway. So I wanted to make sure that when we were doing this research that we didn't accidentally, by chance, happen upon the worst one and then make fun of it and say this whole idea is a terrible idea. Because that's not fair to anybody. So instead, we grabbed a bunch of them and did a very, quick, spent a couple days on each one, see what the general security posture is and what the situation is. So we got from 3 manufacturers. They were off-the-shelf suppliers chosen at random, so I'm hesitant. It's not because I don't want to give out the names of the companies that make these, but I don't want that to be the focus, because that's not the point. The point is the general state of the industry. So the suppliers were chosen at random, could have been anybody. I said the same, so this is a lesson I learned when I did the Progressive insurance thing, because everybody focused on Progressive and that wasn't necessarily fair, because they offered a free trial. So something that they're trying to do that was nice ended up biting them in the ass, because then their name showed up and everything. So instead we're going to avoid that this time. So we got the emails after you buy these things and register with the accounts, and there was a vulnerability before they had even showed up. I mean, it's a trivial, kind of stupid one, but they put the password in the get parameters for a URL, which you're not supposed to do. This particular, I think I put the HTTPS redirector in there, or it is HTTPS, so I mean, it's not a big vulnerability, but it still was hilarious that I hadn't even gotten them yet, and we're talking about vulnerabilities. So let's rip into some pictures of what they look like. So this is this one here, and in this setting, I'll just say who it is. This is a Rand McNally, which is an interesting company to make ELDs, but I suppose when you're talking about geospatial location stuff, then they care, or maybe they're just looking for money. But this is what it looks like inside here, and basically you've got the only components that matter are these here, because the rest are power, or they're a cellular data port. But it's real basic ARM with some flash unencrypted over SPY bus. I think that this was SPY, but and then a CAN transceiver, and that's basically the entirety of this whole system, which is pretty straightforward. And then we had another one that looks again very similar. You've got this stuff. You've got U blocks for some wireless communications. Otherwise, you've got the main processor, flash, and a CAN transceiver, and then a bunch of power stuff. And then this one is kind of interesting because this one, even though it has a SIM card there, this one doesn't actually connect to the vehicle. surprising because, spoiler, this one's the most secure because it doesn't talk to the truck. But they're in violation of the ELD requirements because you're supposed to talk to the truck. So technically this doesn't meet, so you can't use this one. But it's self-certified, so until somebody goes through and says that you can't use it, then I guess you can. I'm really glad that I don't have to worry about that side of the problem. So I feel bad for any lawmakers or enforcement, since the guidelines on that are pretty terrible. But that's how it works with new stuff. But this is a similar type of thing. So this one has a printer on it and a screen, so it's got a little bit more electronics that are interesting. But otherwise pretty straightforward. And so when we're looking at it, then obviously, so the goal with the hardware is you want to identify the components, you want to identify any debug pins. This is a good one for debug pins. Right there, the pads on the end of that there. You want to identify debug pins, you want to identify, see if you can pull the chips off, read the firmware off the chips, that kind of thing. So standard hardware analysis stuff. But again, we were sort of in a hurry with each one of these, so we were trying to make it as fast as possible. So if we ran into any roadblocks that made it sort of annoying, if debug was disabled, if the flash was encrypted, then we were just going to, basically be done with that device and move on. That never happened, so. So the hardware analysis for these was fairly straightforward. Then we get into the software where we're going to use the best hacking tool ever, called Strings. You purposely can't see this, which is fine. But it's, you get more information just running strings on a firmware than anything for the initial stuff. So like some of these, one of them has the full path to the developer's workstation. The guy's name is Jenkins. So I can imagine that, back in the shop, they're like, Jenkins, get that build out. So he put his full path in there to the files and everything. Then you've got interesting stuff, of course, hard-coded passwords, that kind of thing also show up in strings. And then you throw in some reverse engineering. This part is the Bluetooth pairing and handling side to this particular dongle. So this dongle has some Bluetooth in it that communicates with the app and doing some reverse engineering there. And so we're doing minimal amounts of that to try and find security stuff and some issues. So before I really get to the conclusions, I'd like to say that you don't have to just take my word for it in this case, which I think is why I love how this research panned out in the end. And that's where we start talking about the Cybertruck Challenge. So the Cybertruck Challenge was an event that was put on in Detroit, where a bunch of students from multiple universities and community colleges showed up. They brought in some heavy trucks, and then they did some class, and then the kids were given free reign over the trucks to test, to poke, to do basically anything. And then they had representatives from the vehicles that were there. I won't tell you who those are, because sort of as a side note, mini rant here, the culture of heavy trucking is very interesting, and security is new for them, so they really have trouble talking about it. Like in their minds, it's still like an embarrassing thing, or they're worried about. Like if you have a vulnerability, that means you did something wrong. Is sort of how they're looking at things, and you're calling their baby ugly, which is a problem. So events like this don't receive the kind of attention that they should, because these are positive steps forward, but like they wouldn't allow press in, and I couldn't take any pictures and really talk about it. But the Detroit Free Press, authorized or no, I'm not sure, put an article out, so I put a screenshot of that one in here. So anyway, the students had no previous exposure or experience doing any vehicle hacking, especially hardware hacking. They'd never been pulling chips, they'd never been messing with any of this stuff. So as part of that challenge, they brought in a whole bunch of equipment, multimeters, bus pirates, crazy, like anything you need, soldering irons, and there wasn't a rework station. That would have been cool. But unfortunately, we didn't have that. Thankfully, nobody ran into any VGAs that were a problem. But so the students are looking at the system, and basically this was over the course of about 6 hours. People who had never done any of this before, granted there was a little bit of hand-holding from an instructor, from Grimm, shout out to them. I don't think they would mind me saying that they were there. But sat with the students and walked through every one of these things apart. And they were able to extract the firmware over a single wire debug, identify lack of encryption, pull the full control off, flash their own firmware to the device, start some basic analysis with GDB. Basically, if you want to get into truck hacking, you should buy one of these, and then this can be your truck, your interface with the truck, because these are awesome. They're small, compact, and they're totally open, so you can change them to whatever you want. There's no security on it whatsoever. So, and the adapters that you buy if you want to get into truck hacking can be like $2,000, $5,000 to try and interface with this stuff. I personally use a BeagleBone with a canvas cape on it. But if you want something that has wireless on it too, then go to Walmart and buy one of these things. And you can flash your own firmware on it and then start messing with trucks and getting data off of them and stuff. So they're perfect for that. It's really cool. But that's what the students realized too. And so some of them are going to go and buy that and then replicate what they were doing at the challenge to identify and dig through those and be able to do truck stuff on their own. But the student opinion of the devices was that security was low to non-existent, which is in line with my personal opinion as well, after conducting the research. So, so what came out of it, unfortunately, is that these devices, it seems like a lot of them are being shipped with debug enabled, no fuses blown, no. I mean, if you do any hardware stuff, this is pretty par for the course, right? So really the goal of the research was, let's see where the bar's here, let's see if somehow these guys have managed to get above the bar. Unfortunately, they didn't. So the device is shipping without debug, with debug still enabled. The firmware is easily accessible, it's unencrypted. There's development strings present, there's plenty of use of banned functions, we've got stir copies all over in there. Basically insecure coding practices and a lack of following security best practices when it comes to deploying production software. And that's unfortunate because these are mandated. And what is otherwise unfortunate is the language in that bill that is coming out to push these back actually did cite cybersecurity concerns, but it's sort of unfortunate because there are companies who do telematics, this is what they do. So Rand McNally is not a telematics company, right? But they put one of these out. And I'm sure they bought it from somebody else or just threw some money at a shop and said, hey, put this together. This is all conjecture, please do not take it as a quote. I'm not trying to disparage Rand McNally in any way. But they are not a telematics company in the same sense that some of the other companies that are out there are. And so, like for instance, on the panel last night at CodeNomiCon, we had a question that was, what gives you hope looking toward the future? And what gives me hope, and also adds to my cynicism, unfortunately, is that it's possible to make embedded hardware devices that are difficult to hack into, that are relatively secure, at least certainly better than where the bar is at now. It's possible to do that. And I get excited about that. Because I think the future where we have chips and stuff, where the chips actually do what they want, instead of like the Internet of Shit Twitter account, if anybody follows that, highly recommend it. Put a chip in anything, and it'll show up there. But it's possible to make secure devices. And there are companies who are actually putting forth pretty good effort into doing that. But then something like this ELD mandate is, they get lost in the noise with the commoditization, the heavy commoditization of the problem. Which is sort of unfortunate, but I mean, I think in time the wheat will get separated from the chaff, and then we'll figure out how to actually do this. But in the meantime, they're scrambling to figure out how they're going to work with the regulation. Everybody's trying to get the ELDs in place. The other part that I think is hilarious about this, which we didn't talk about yet, is so one of the motivators for doing this in the first place was logbooks can be falsified, right? Well, so can trucks. And plugging this into your truck simulator will give you the same kind of data that the truck will. And you can obviously lie. Personally, it's probably because this is black magic to most people. But personally, I think it's easier to lie to these than it is to a logbook and to the face of somebody who, if I'm staring at somebody in the face and they're like, hey, did you drive more than you should have? And I'm like, no, that log is correct. I'm going to have trouble because I don't want to lie to people. But a computer I'll lie to all day and have no second thoughts about it, which is maybe a weird part to my morality that I should explore more and just see what it's about. But computers I'll lie to because, and these are easier to lie to. I think when I got started doing the progressive dongle stuff, most of my leap or initial, there was plenty of information out there from this community of people who were defrauding the insurance companies, and they were plugging in fake cars to the dongles to make it look like they only drove on Sunday to church and never went over 25 miles an hour, that kind of thing. And you can do the same kind of thing with this because if you know anything about CAN bus, it's pretty difficult to add any sort of encryption or authentication. Like, you're not going to sign your messages coming out of the truck. That's not going to be a thing in the near future. You guys think that'll ever be a thing? Signing messages out of the truck? Yeah, I don't think so. So for the foreseeable future, you're going to be able to lie as much as you want and not have to look a person in the face when you do it. So I'm not sure that it's going to accomplish really what they wanted. It will sure make things easier, though. That's absolutely true. And a little bit more safer, I think. But what's the actual potential impact? Let's say we've got an insecure device here. This device is connected directly to the bus of the truck. The same bus that sends control messages for certain things or accesses other information within the truck itself. And now we've got a wireless communication device in this. Some of them are only Bluetooth and require the app to shovel the information back up to the servers. Some of them had you saw that one in there that had SIMs right in them. But the reality is we're exposing and increasing the attack surface of the heavy trucks that are out there on the road. And that's especially important because heavy trucking is critical infrastructure. And the other thing that we talked about on the panel a little bit, and I unfortunately had to agree with Charlie Miller in that, so the vehicle hacking stuff was interesting because everybody can identify with that. Almost everybody gets in a car. Almost everybody is concerned about whether the car is going to do something weird. But when you start talking about more abstract things like a truck, that doesn't affect the average person directly. So it's tough for them to care about that kind of thing, unfortunately. And I think we have enough FUD out there and talking about terrorism and that kind of thing. And I'm not sure that that's going to advance the state of the industry when it comes to this, but some people are doing really great things in terms of trying to help make that more secure. But since trucking is critical infrastructure, what does happen if the device is locally vulnerable? So if you have to be near the device, so I would count Bluetooth in that kind of because of the range drop-off. Potentially, or actually, so for this, if I'm an attacker and I can get access to the truck through the cab, it doesn't take hardly any time at all to change the firmware in this to what I want. But we're sort of already at that point when it comes to trucks. Like if you have physical access to a truck or a car, that's kind of already game over if you can access the bus directly. But if these things are remotely vulnerable, either through the cellular communication itself, the wireless stack itself, or through the communication that it has with the back-end servers, then we're in much more of a problem. And if you can do something like the back-end infrastructure is vulnerable and push your malicious firmware up, that can then be disguised as an update and pushed out to other devices and use the infrastructure against it, then we're obviously I mean, that's like a worst-case scenario. But there are people working on it, but the potential impact for this is a really great novel. Has anybody read The Damon Suarez? Fantastic book, highly recommend. But in that, I mean, that came out like 7 years ago, 10 years ago now, something like that. Yeah, but even then, he could kind of see the direction where things were going. So autonomous cars are a thing in there, and then they're being controlled by hackers, so they're running around. But like any true sort of cyberpunk thriller, he also has autonomous motorcycles, and he attaches katanas to the motorcycles, because that's cool. So it's a really cool book. You should read it. But it also sort of explores what's the impact when you're talking about this kind of thing, because these are homogeneous systems. right? So if you have a vulnerability that's going to affect a bunch of these devices, and these are in 10,000 trucks, 1,000 trucks maybe, 50 trucks. How many does it take? I don't know. But if you can control them all at the same time and turn them into a robot army because it really is a robot if you have access to control how the vehicle operates, if we're talking about the autonomous section, then it gets pretty interesting pretty fast. And again, the trucking industry is critical to the United States of America. If we had a problem with the trucking industry, that would be real bad. People wouldn't care at first, but then so here's a question maybe I would pose to you, is if we could do a quick show of hands, who thinks that if somebody said, okay, we've got a widespread hack on our trucks, and we've our trucking industry's down, who thinks that the average person would notice or care? In the first 10 days, or the first day, where it's not really affecting anything. Okay, so one person thinks that somebody would care. I like your optimism. But after, what is it, you know this much more, 3 days. So 3 days, then things start disappearing from Walmart shelves. They're not being restocked. You're not able to get your new diapers, or whatever it is that you need. Then at what point, so here's the different show of hands. Who thinks that they would blame Walmart or blame the trucking hack? So who thinks all the blame would be put on Walmart? Who thinks the blame would be put on the trucking industry? Okay, so that really sucks. But that's how critical infrastructure works as well. That's an interesting experiment. So that was in line with my thinking as well. I think that people would look at the shortest thing that affects them directly and just make the decision. And so, unfortunately, the end suppliers are the ones, the shelf owners are the ones who are in trouble with that side of things. But then we also talked about how ELDs are easier to spoof than logbooks. And this is a PDF, so this doesn't work. But I really like this. It's a scene from Bruce Almighty where if you've ever seen that, Jim Carrey gets godlike powers. So right there, that's all the premise you need for a movie. Yes, let's green like that for a $10 million budget. So Jim Carrey gives himself a Lamborghini or whatever, and he's stuck in traffic, and he holds his fingers up and goes like this, and all the traffic moves out of the way so he can turn on the road at full speed. And someday, if we get enough autonomous vehicles, then we can do that too. So the flashcard for this one, in terms of what we're hoping to get for takeaways for anybody, is electronic logging devices that replace driver logbooks are mandated by the US government. These devices are heavily commoditized, fail to follow almost all cybersecurity best practices, and the impact to the US critical infrastructure is real, and remote connectivity without cybersecurity considerations is a honest-to-goodness problem that we have to think about. But to give hope at the end, I will say that there are people who are working on this. Some of them are in the room now. The National Motor Freight and Trucking Association is pushing to help take the trucking industry sort of into the modern era where we start talking about autonomous stuff and remote connectivity and realizing that we have to care about this kind of thing. Because traditionally, the industry does not. And it's been a fight that's going on in commercial auto for a long time as well. It was a fight that we had in critical infrastructure, in power grids, ICS stuff. It's even a fight in IoT a little bit, but IoT is less cultural and more dollar-driven. The dollar problem is definitely a problem in other industries, but that's an interesting thing to think about. So that's the end of the talk, and thanks. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, we can do that. We got some time. Yes, Tom.
Do these things have the capability of sending messages on the CAN bus? And if so, do they need that capability to do their function, or are they just lazy not to disable it?
Ooh, that's a good question. So the question was, can they send data? They can send data. I didn't meet one that had any sort of other restrictions in there. Granted, we didn't look at a whole lot of them. But yeah, so they can send data. I don't know enough about the J1939 spec. Is it required? So for auto, you have to request certain messages, like the VIN. It works the same way for J1939. So you do have to send certain data in order to...
There's certainly other devices on the system that are doing those requests. So just passively listen to get what they need. Which
It's,
you can do on auto too. So.
That's true. So there's a couple ways to combat that. And one of them is passively listen and hope that somebody else asks for it, which almost all the time does happen. But if you were actually caring about whether you were compliant with 444 pages, then you couldn't do that, ironically. But the other strategy seems to be putting some sort of buffer in place. Like, and this is the one that I advocated. I made an open source, just a proof of concept tool in this regard, but something that sits on the bus, periodically requests the messages that are needed, and then transmits those only out. And then, so it doesn't take any communication from the secondary interface. So sort of a pivot dual home system that has write only on one side. So you're taking the security and trying to make it better from that perspective, a unidirectional gateway, if you will. But we have to do something with that because yeah, putting devices that write directly onto the bus and can communicate in any way is not the ideal situation. So we need some sort of either segmentation or acceptance that you might not get the data exactly when you want it, but if you listen long enough, it'll show up.
What kind of message, what kind of control can you send to the truck to control the computer?
So the question is, what kind of message can you send to control the computer? So that sort of depends on what the truck is. Because everything uses this, and older trucks will not have as many cool systems. You can sort of think about it like if you've got a car that has park assist, then you've got some system with actuators that changes this direction of the truck or the vehicle or whatever. Same kind of thing. So some trucks have really cool stuff that you can do, and some are pretty bad. So the actual defense when it comes to some of this is just use older stuff that doesn't have any cool features on it. But as we get more autonomous, then you're going to have more actuators that actually change the direction or speed or that kind of thing.
I don't know if you use these kind of actively. Hack the computer of the, hacking the little light section.
So the question is, would you use it to hack other systems on the truck, or would you use it to just send the message? So unless there's significant segmentation with how the CAN bus is set up, you could just compromise this, and then this is your main attack point. You don't have to move anymore. I mean, some of the work that IOActive has done and demonstrated is attacking ECUs from the bus. So then, yeah, you could pivot and get a foothold within the truck itself, because if somebody takes this out, then you lose your foothold. That kind of thing. That's getting more into the persistence side of things, but yeah. Anybody else? All right. Oh, yeah.
So while you're doing research for this, did you run into any companies who are working on autonomous trucks?
No. So for this particular research, it didn't really have anything to do with autonomous specifically. It's focused more on the logging side of things. So this is sort of a one-off, which is what makes it a little bit weird, because these guys, I don't even know if any of the people who make these actually talk to any truck manufacturers or anything. They probably just got the spec for J1939 and said, okay, we can do that, and then the spec for the ELDs, and then just put together a hardware device. Throw it on the shelf, see if you make a few bucks. All right, all set. You guys can get out of here. Thanks.
Thanks, Troy.